Hi, my name is Chris Bernick, and welcome to my presentation on adult identity development, and thank you for viewing it. So the framework for my research paper on adult identity development was to first look at it in historical terms uh, related to Erikson's stages of development and Marcia's theory of identity development, the factors that affect identity development, and how these affect adult learning. So the first thing that I'll be covering is going to be the founders of identity development, Erikson and Marcia. Next, we'll look at the factors and research associated with identity development. Uh, Third thing we're going to be looking at is the learning implications, and then lastly, there'll be a review. So two pioneering individuals in the field of identity are Erikson and Marcia. Erik Erikson was a psychologist who was influenced by Freud but focused more on the ego of the individual. Erikson created the stages of development that an individual will go through in their life. In each stage, the needs of the individual conflict with society, and out of that, a virtue is discovered that will aid the individual in the next stage. For this research paper and presentation, I focused on stages 5, 6, 7, and 8, but more emphasis was placed on stages 6, 7, and 8 because of the age group. Marcia extended the work of Erikson and created the theory of identity development. In this sequential process, Marcia proposed that individuals, when presented with a crisis or held views that no longer fit, an individual will go through a number of stages. So the goal was to clarify personal identity, and the structure can be defined in terms of crisis, periods of struggle and commitment, decisions, and during those areas of struggle. So I'm going to start in the top left here with identity achieved. In identity achieved, there was a crisis, and there was active exploration and reflection, and that led to commitment. Next to that is foreclosed. In the foreclosed stage, there's no crisis, but there is a commitment to goals and values. The bottom left here, moratorium, is there has been a crisis, but there is no active exploration and commitment. And then the final and lowest stage is identity diffused, where there is no crisis and no commitment. So I was able to find a lot of research on adult identity development and identity development in general. And I broke down this research into four categories. The first one being the guiding questions or the hypotheses that are associated with each research piece, the methods that the researchers used, participants that were involved in each, and the conclusions that came out of each of these studies. So when looking at the guiding questions and the hypotheses that was present in the research articles I found, self-concept was definitely one of the major themes, readiness to change, education and career, living arrangements, and identity development. So all the researchers looked at identity development in terms of those things. This led to questions that I formed, such as do outside factors affect identity development? If these factors exist, to what extent do they influence identity development? What are the characteristics of identity development? And what is the overall process of adult identity development? Also, some of these questions were used as guiding questions for the research. So when looking at the methods that were used in the research articles, there definitely was a variety, but there was a common strand between most of these research articles, and that involved questionnaires, interviews, and scales, which were originally developed by either Erikson or Marcia, and then they were modified by the researchers. Some of the questions included in the questionnaire that helped to establish identity development were, for example, I have definitely decided on the occupation I want to pursue. I don't expect to change my political principles. The participants there was a wide range of participants throughout all of these studies. Men and women were equally represented. The age range was 18 to 63. Some of the articles focused on more of the 40 to 60, others from 18 to 35, some from 20 to 40. So there's definitely a good age range in there. There was also a range of socioeconomic status, marital status, education, so it gave a good variety of participants. So now on to the conclusions of the research pieces that I found. Two very important points were, one, identity development is not an innate piece of the human condition. And the second one is implications from both Erikson and Marcia point towards identity development and adult identity development as a developmental process, which includes a variety of social and psychological factors that directly impact this process, which in turn can be related directly to adult learning. So now I'm going to highlight some of the other important conclusions that were found in the research. The first one being internal changes plays into the transition to all identity statuses. A shift in identity status is definitely an internal process. Environmental influences play a large role. So outside factors such as career, socioeconomic status, education, all play a role in identity development. Gender, there's definitely some differences in males and females when it comes to identity development and adult identity development. College, it was one of the studies pointed out that not much identity development occurs until college age, and individuals that do not attend college, there's very limited research on those individuals and their identity development. And finally, this idea of the self-concept, and self-concept relates more to this first one about internal change and willingness to engage in different thoughts and different identities. So at this point in the presentation, I'm going to build upon the conclusions that were found in the research and I've highlighted so far. And I'm going to do this by building on the assumptions of Knowles and the adult learner. Adult learners are self-directed. Adult learners build upon their experiences. The readiness of an adult to learn is related to developmental tasks of the social role. Adult learners are problem-centered. Adult learners are internally motivated, and adult learners need reason to learn something. So bringing in from the previous slide, the findings from the research, environmental influences play a large role, gender and the idea of self-concept. It can be directly correlated to these assumptions. For example, environmental influences relates to experience, relates to motivation, relates to reason, and relates to problem-centered. Some individuals may not have the same experiences or be in the same identity phase, and the problem may not make any sense. Gender also plays a large role in experience and reason. The point being that adult learning definitely has a place within adult identity development. So, sort of the final word and the review of adult identity development is it's a process that must be taken into account when dealing with adult learners. There's too many correlating factors to ignore identity development when looking at it from the assumption of Knowles. Um, as an educator, as a person facilitating the learning, designing activities that foster this development can be extremely important and can be crucial to the development of the learning experience and the individual. This can also lead to picking appropriate strategies when dealing with different adult learners. Um, Thank you again for viewing my presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to everyone's feedback.